Hello, this is Karen Laurie with Chronic Pleasure Podcast, where we talk about some things that are good for us and some things that we can let go of. And I wanted to share this kind of special episode, which is where I got interviewed by Adam Gell about some near-death experiences that I had. And I just thought maybe you guys might want to watch it and see. And there's certain things you can learn. And one thing that I said in the podcast, but I just want to share here also, is that you don't need to have a near-death experience to be able to experience what people who have had a near-death experience. So it's a really fun podcast, and I hope you're well. Have a beautiful rest of your day. I love you.
Let's welcome today's guest, Karen Laurie. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Adam. So nice to be here. I appreciate you inviting me to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, prior to us coming on, you asked me if I had a near-death experience, and the interest of me delving into this work or this subject is kind of interesting for me, and it makes me look into how people go through certain experiences, and then it reshapes their life. It puts them in a different path, or maybe puts them on the path they were supposed to be on, as opposed to the path they were headed. And for many of the interviews I've done, many people speak about having had the wrong profession or were in the wrong profession that wasn't on a soul level, but more on a material level. And you had an experience yourself, as well as having a interesting acting career. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about your near-death experience that shaped some of the ways and in which the path that you forged ahead on.
Yeah, sure. I probably had two, but I'll share the one that I know for sure was one. The first one I'll share is I was in Hawaii. I was doing a modeling job on a boat in a bikini, and it was a windy day. It was about 30 to 40 knot winds. I'm a sailor. I knew that it was strong winds, but they asked me if I would do spinnaker flying, and I never considered anything about it because I'd never done it before, so I didn't have any awareness of it. And there was a man who went on before me, and he was probably close to like almost twice my weight. He was probably like 280, and I weighed about 100 at the time. I weigh 118 now. Got more weight on, which is muscle. Anyway, so this guy went up, and he was bouncing around up there, and then he said, "No, it looks good. Just got to hold on really tight." And I said, "Okay." And nobody on the boat even considered our weight difference. So when I got on it's like the spinnaker is a big wide sail, and they have a little holes that they use on either side of the sail, and lock it up with a like a swing set, like a small swing. So you sit on the small swing and you hold the sail or the thing. So I get on there, and the wind is so strong it picks me up, and I don't have the ballast that he had. I don't have the weight that he had. So the sail goes up, and it was a 65-foot mast, and I literally am up above the mast. I see the mast, and the sail is inverting, and I'm above it probably at least 10 feet, and then it whips me down onto my back onto the ocean.
Wow.
And I went, my wind got knocked out of me, and I went down, and I went down fast and hard. Like I just remember going all the way down, and I was panicking and scared, and I got completely disoriented. I probably got a pretty good concussion as well. And I was really disoriented, and I couldn't figure out which way was up, which way was down. And it was in Hawaii, and in Hawaii is a volcanic, thing. And the lava comes out, and then it's just ocean, like a mile deep or 2 miles deep. So we were in the part that was past the lava. So it was deep, and I didn't know, I couldn't see the ground, and I couldn't see the sky. There was no light up in the sky. Like usually underwater, you can see little sparkles. Couldn't see.
Right.
And I started to panic. I was really panicked. I was trying to get up. I didn't have any air, and I was really scared. And then something happened where my body relaxed, and I felt this very gentle, relaxing, welcoming golden light. And it was so obviously loving and so beautiful. And it felt like I knew it felt like there were people there in that light that I knew, but I didn't know who they were that I knew. Like maybe they were my relatives or something, or people that had been in my life before that had died. I don't know what it was, but it was felt like there was these people in this light that I knew without knowing who they were. And I felt myself going towards that because it was so relaxing and so pure and peaceful and calm. And I thought, oh, this feels so good. I'm going that way. And then I heard a voice that said, do you want to live or die? And thought of my mom. And I love my mom, still love my mom. And immediately something happened, and there was an energy that came through me. Now, I still hadn't breathed, and I don't know how long it was. And I personally didn't know how to get to the top of the water, but there was a force within me that came forward or came through me. And as it came through me, I was going up to the water. I don't even know if I was swimming. I don't know if I was kicking my legs or what. Because I still hadn't breathed, and it was quite a while. And I was just going up. It was like I was propelled, like almost like rocket fuel.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, and then I felt myself come up to the thing, and I see the boat, and I see that there's a man that had climbed down onto the ladder, and they had been looking for me, and he had a life
Yeah, life jacket, life
life
vest.
like those round things, those
Yes,
lifesavers,
yes, lifesaver. Yeah.
lifesaver, and he was trying to throw it to me, but the waves were big. It's 30 knot, 40 knot winds, so the waves were pretty high. They're like 20, probably 20 feet, some 15, some 25 maybe. And I couldn't get to it. It was still a good distance between where I was and this thing. And I still hadn't breathed, even when I came up to the air, because the wind had been knocked out of my, when you get the air knocked out of you, you still can't
Yes.
catch. And I hadn't still caught my breath. So I'm out there and I'm trying to get it, but I don't have any air and I don't have any power and I can't get to it. And I started to relax and I felt that light again. It was like an invitation of, this peacefulness and this love and connection. And then I heard the voice, do you want to live or die? And I thought of my mom again. And I said, mom, live. And in a second, without me knowing how it happened, I don't know how it happened, I'm at the lifesaver. It was, it was far. I couldn't even
Wow,
see it.
wow, 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 wow.
Big, but somehow I was there. I don't remember how I got there. I don't know if I used, like, there was no oxygen in my body that it felt like. I mean, I probably had some, but at this point, it was probably like 6 or 7 minutes without oxygen, at least, maybe longer. I don't know. And then the guy pulls me and he puts me over his shoulder and climbs up the ladder, and they get me on the thing. I had to pump my stomach, and then they gave me mouth to mouth. And once I got mouth to mouth, I came back. I was like breathing again on my own. So it's probably out 8, 9, I don't know how many minutes. Like, it was a long time though.
Right.
It was black and blue, like by the next day, all up and down my spine, on both sides of my spine. And I never talked about it. And what was interesting is there was something in me that was like, that was something that was very private and very beautiful and very different than anything I had known, that I remembered. And I didn't know how to talk about it. And but later, like about 15 years ago, when I remembered that situation really clearly, I had always remembered it, but I remembered it and understood it about 15 years ago. Then I started to see, oh, that's part of the reason that I was more interested in psychic things. I read, all of Dean Radin's books. I interviewed him on my podcast. I have a podcast called Stories We Love. I've interviewed another guy named Mark Gober, who studies psychic phenomena and does some of the science on it.
Yeah,
So
I've interviewed him.
yeah, great guy. So I was just so fascinated with everything of this stuff, and I was reading all these books about it. And about like I don't know how many years ago, but within this decade, I was doing some deep work. I used to have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is where you are awake during the night and then you fall asleep multiple times during the day. And while I was just relaxing, actually, and I had really been titrating off this medicine, I had like 27 bottles of medicine because they give it to you every month by mail, that I hadn't taken. I was really titrating off. So I was doing, like, they wanted you to take 2 things of this like this size. It was liquid, and I was taking like this much of one. So I was getting off it. I was getting off it, but it was still there, and I was still having a little trouble at night. And then I did this. I was deeply relaxed, and all of a sudden, I saw myself when I was 3 or 4, where I was riding my big wheel with my neighbors around the block, and they were older, so I was trying to keep up, and the root of the tree ahead had buckled up the sidewalk, and it was, daunting, when you're in that, when you're that
Yeah.
size, I was like, oh my God, a big hill. And I kind of panicked, and the lip of my big wheel hit, and I remember going towards the sycamore tree thinking, oh, I'm flying. And then I hit it, and then I didn't remember anything until a few years ago, so like within the last decade. And what ended up happening was, when I remembered it recently, like in the last decade, what happened was I was floating above my body, which was on the couch. Somehow I'd gotten back to my house. I don't know how. And I was laying on the couch, and my mom, my dad, and the doctor were there, all standing over me. And the doctor said, you have to wake her up every hour or she could die. Now, that's not current medicine, but that was the medicine when I was a kid. And I remember, excuse me, I remember watching from above, and I could see my little body, shock white hair from, super blonde hair. And I could see my body and my little brain saying, oh, I better not fall asleep or stay asleep because I could die. And I put that connection together recently. I hadn't known that, but so that day I did this healing work, and then I sleep now like easily 6 hours straight. You don't do that in narcolepsy. It's like every hour and a half or so. 6 hours straight, or 9 hours straight, or 8 hours straight, or 10 hours straight. I slept one time 11 hours with one wake up. So I'm like, something really shifted in my physiology just from that experience, from healing that experience.
Right. Having the near-death experience itself, what do you think the significance of it was for you, as in terms of your spiritual transformation? Like, what impact did it have, and why do you think you experienced it?
Well, from the first one, I know as a child, from right after that, forever, I didn't remember what happened or anything like that. I had a really bad concussion, but I remember that I was very interested in reading all these books about near-death experiences. I read tons of Raymond Moody, like in second, third, fourth grade, right? I just started reading those books. And there was something about me. So I always had an openness to the mystical without knowing why. I don't know exactly why I created those things to happen in my life, but I will say that they really informed me about the power of choice. For sure, with the one in the ocean, there was a choice I had. I could die or I could live. And it didn't seem to matter that I was not able to breathe, that I was deep in the ocean, that I was disoriented, that that I had a severe accident. That none of that seems to matter. It only mattered, did I want to live or did I want to go? And just thinking of how much I loved my mom. I love my dad and my brother too, but at that time she was the one that came to my mind. And thinking about that, there was a power that came forth. It was a choice. And I wasn't a victim. And it really helped me later. I had gotten into victim mentality a lot in my earlier life. I had a lot of experiences that could provide that for me. And then when I started to heal, I realized that I couldn't be a victim. It's just not possible. I had attracted these experiences that were tricky for me. And I remembered, that's when I remembered that thing about when I was 18, that near-death experience, because I saw I've had a choice. I've always had a choice, even though I was trained not to think I had a choice. I was trained to think that somebody else is more powerful than me, or that I don't deserve to have a choice or something like that. But I really got it that, oh, we all have a choice and we can choose which way we go, unless we're having belief systems that get in our way, that make us think, oh, this person knows better than me, and this person says I'm going to die in 3 days or 6 months or whatever it is, or this person is telling me what to do and I better follow it, even though my body is telling me that it doesn't like it, right? There's certain,
Right, right, right.
and so I had a lot of that stuff where I was not following myself until literally 15 years ago. And then something shifted in me, another spiritual awakening where I just was like, I cannot allow anything to get between me and my spirit anymore. And it took a while for me to get to that place, but I'm so committed to being in alignment with that force of love, that force of choice, that force of power that provides the power to get to something or to get up to the air, even though I couldn't breathe, but to get to the lifesaver, to get, there's a power that's there. And I just started to see my whole life passed before my eyes like 15 years ago, where I saw all the times that I was having fun,
Right.
I had a ton of energy, and all the times I was depressed, I suffered and I got sicker. And I saw it so clearly, and I saw every relationship, and it just helped me see that we have so much power. And I literally was able to let go of so much of the victimhood that I had lived with for most of my life. You know, I
Yeah,
just
right, right.
got into it.
Yeah, many people they have experiences similar to yours in terms of other people may have a life review, quick life review, I guess to see others, situations in life where they failed other people and actually lived the situation or see some type of entity that communicates with them. I guess you hearing that voice of having the choice whether to stay or to go was that voice, that a profound voice. Uh, in terms of this experience, a lot of times people when they go through some type of trauma or an NDE or a spiritual, awakening, they develop certain, I would say, maybe gifts that they may have had or weren't aware of. Was there anything that came to mind or developed from that situation?
Mm, yes. I mean, I do believe we all have the gifts, whether they're allowed to come forth or not, that's
Right.
one thing. But I think we all have equal but unique gifts. Everybody's got their own gifts that are specific to them, but I believe everybody has access to it. I don't think you need a near-death experience to get the gifts. But if you did have one, like don't go out and try to get a near-death experience to get the
Right,
gifts, right?
right, right, right. Well, then,
But but the some of the gifts that I really feel is one, this openness. And then when I put it together, the life review happened like 15 years ago. And I just saw where I had created things. I saw where I was creating everything in my life. And it really, I think part of the biggest gift I have is that, like a lot of people, let's say they're sick. I was sick at that time. I had narcolepsy, depleted adrenals, PTSD, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, dissociation where you're not present. You're
yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
zombie. So I was like that. And I was getting divorced from this man that I adored. So I had a lot of stuff going on. And once I had this kind of review, there was something in me that said, I'm committed. And there's a beautiful quote by William Hutchinson Murray that I used to read, I still read, but I've read it since I'm in my 20s. It's called the first three sentences are until one is committed, and then it says, until one is committed, I'm not going to say it right. There is hesitancy, a chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. But the moment one commits himself, then providence moves too, and all sorts of remarkable things occur that would never have otherwise have occurred. And you have unseen meetings and opportunity.
Synchronicities.
Yeah, and you're in the right place at the right time. So he talked about that, and that's something that has been like, I remember the first time I read it, I loved it. And so I copied it down and I read it over and over again. And I have it in my phone. I don't know where my phone is, but I read it I read it in my phone like almost every morning. I just love the way that quote makes me feel, which is it makes me have that same power, that same freedom of choice that I had that got me up to the top of the ocean and that got me to the lifesaver. And so part of the gift I'm going to say is I got so committed. I know there are lots of people that could be sick or could be addicted to something and they don't care. They just want to be sick and do that. And that's totally their choice. But I realized I've got to take my power back. I've got to get my body healed. I've got to get my mind healed. And I just was so committed and nothing could stop me. Nothing has stopped me.
It's interesting. You chose a career of acting, and I guess the imagination or the ability to go elsewhere on this plane while being present is maybe is a form of dissociation, playing a different role of another person. Maybe, the interpretation from a spiritual perspective could maybe lend itself to that energy in some way, maybe.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I thought of acting. So I studied mind body science when I was in college, how the mind affects the body.
Okay.
Acting is the perfect petri dish for that, because in acting, you play a different character. And what happens when you play a different character is you get to see how your life changes and how your physiology changes. If you believe that you're being that character for that, even if it's just for a week-long episodic show, you
Right.
can physiology. And that really helped me heal, actually. And I wouldn't say I'm retired from acting. I say I've started doing something that's extremely gratifying, but I still love acting.
Yeah.
Um, but there's practices through acting, like to be a good actor, you have to embody the person that you're playing. And I've used that skill that I'm really good at. I've done it over 1,000 hours of TV and film, and commercials. So I know how to do it. And I've used that skill to embody who I want to be instead of embodying what a writer wrote for me.
Oh, interesting. So in other words, almost like a projection of the character, a manifestation of what a character you can
Well,
grow.
when you're doing acting jobs, the writer writes whatever their vision
Right.
of that character is, and
Okay.
you find a way to make it your vision, but
Right.
working with their vision, right? You find your way to work with what they've written, and in that case, I could be their character. But then I thought, why would I want to have somebody else write my life story or my life, write my character?
Right.
I
Right.
all through my life, parents, um, different adults in my life, basically when I was a kid, all wrote my life for me. They all said who I was. And my friends said who I was, and teachers and all that stuff. People said, oh, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this. None of it was really, some of it might have been true, but none of it was really who I really am. And most of us are walking around masquerading from ourselves who we really are. Because who we really are, I believe, is God incarnate. We're all love incarnate, God incarnate, power incarnate, kindness incarnate.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I feel that to such a degree. And so what I did was I designed, if I were God incarnate, who would I be? And then I started playing that role. I mean, that's one of the roles I've played. I played
Right.
other roles,
Right.
but that's one I created for myself. And it was the role of, being full of love, unconditional love, grace, kindness, joy,
Yeah.
freedom, power.
In terms of the talent that you encompassed within yourself and the ability to step into a character and play that role, um, one would think that a spiritual path and a acting career don't go hand in hand based upon the fact. Oh well, in so
I didn't.
no,
I was,
insofar as the 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 environment, so to speak, that an actor or actress is involved in, and maybe the mindset of the industry itself. Not that I know about the industry. Uh, I speak about it only so far as maybe it takes a person like yourself and a person who is evolved to be able to separate themselves from certain things and become evolved and grow on a path. Did that ever cross your path or your mind?
well, I mean, the truth is, at least in the people I know in the movie industry, most of the people I know are pretty spiritual. A
Right.
lot of them they might not call it spiritual, but they're writing something and they're saying, I'm not writing it. There's something moving through me. Or they're playing music and they're going, oh my God, I can't believe my fingers are doing this. I'm not playing the guitar. Something is playing through me, right? And those are the kind of people that I seem to meet the most. And pretty much I've had spiritual conversations, I'd say, with almost every single on every single job was somebody on the job. And so I think it is a very spiritual industry. There's also other things, but I think that it's a really spiritual interest. I mean, almost everybody that I know had some connection. They might not call it that, but they had it.
Right, right.
For me, there becoming having the versatility to become a different person for this day or this week, or if you have 3 auditions, 3 different people in one day, right? 3 auditions in a day, you are 3 different people, 3 different physiologies, 3 different behaviors, 3 different pasts, three
Right,
different
right.
relationships. So there's a facility or an agility to like being able to change. For me is super easy. Some people find change really hard, but really the only constant in life is change.
Yes, yes.
That really stays consistent is change. And so but you know, a lot of people are afraid because there's something, you know, we get trained, a lot of us, to go for what is familiar, but what is familiar is often that which keeps us sick, and what is unfamiliar is often taught to be very scary, but mostly what is unfamiliar is freedom.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, like for example, familiar is, oh, it's a birthday party, we're going to have cookies and cake and ice cream. Okay, so that's familiar.
Yes, yes.
It's your birthday and you don't have cookies and cakes and ice cream, there's something unfamiliar happening and it might feel scary, but if you stay with it. So I've had 15 years now of no sugar and 13 years of no grains, more or less. I don't know exactly the numbers, but somewhere in
Wow,
there.
wow.
And no grains, and then like 11 years of no dairy, or 10 years of no dairy, I guess. And so what happened is the experience of cookies and cakes and ice cream, which I used to love, but it always made me feel sick and tired, and it made my skin bad and all that kind of stuff. When now I'm having these birthdays and celebrations, other things, I don't have that. I don't have that to go to, but what I have feels like a greater freedom. So for example, if I'm with people and it's somebody's birthday and they bring the desserts and all that stuff to celebrate, I love that they want to enjoy the desserts. I love the desserts, but I don't feel at all addicted to having them. So I've moved into something that's unfamiliar. I've never known that you could actually love everybody unconditionally. And so this is a completely unfamiliar world, and yet it's so familiar because
Yeah,
I believe we all are. I believe we all love everybody unconditionally. We just don't know
that's
it.
true. The interesting thing is that as you speak about this particular subject or area, as I asked that question, it's so interesting how as life goes on in terms of giving the spiritual side of ourselves a little bit of a support and evolution, like you said, through different changes and through validation and challenging what we once knew from the past. And sometimes I would say our ego is the determining roadblock in terms of surrendering in some capacity to, allowing the spiritual end of spiritual things to come through, to show us that we're immortal, not, immortal. We have our soul goes on, but the body is, will eventually shift. And that's probably the most difficult thing in terms of myself. I know that from playing sports and, for example, playing hockey, ice hockey, and, playing with 20-year-old kids who are playing. And I'm saying, my mind says, I'm going to do this. And then the body says a little bit, you know not to push yourself too far because you'll pay the price the next day. And so I think the people who have developed a spiritual aspect to themselves, who can fall back on the internal world as a support system, are at an advantage to maybe someone who hasn't challenged themselves and just are in a sense of ego and materialism. And that's an important aspect for myself. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy speaking about these particular subjects.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that feels really, really wise of you. Yeah, you interview people on things you're interested in. I like that. I do that too.
yeah, I think it's not only interesting. I think it's obviously it's motivating for other people to challenge themselves to grow. What was your background
Can I say one thing though about ego? I'll just share my, and then I'll answer whatever you're going to ask.
Yeah, sure.
Experience of ego. I used to think ego was bad and I tried to get rid of it and I could never get rid of it. Now my experience of ego is it's the focuser. I can use it to focus on things that will destroy me. I can use it to focus on things that will heal me and uplift me.
How do you do
And
that?
really easily. Um, and really well. How do I do it? Meaning, how do I change the focus?
Yeah.
One of the things I use, I call it, in Sanskrit, there's a word called japa. Japa means the repetition of a sacred name or phrase. And like in Sanskrit, they might use like the name of a god. So you might say Ram, 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 Ram. But if you didn't grow up knowing about Ram, I only know this from like yoga. But if you didn't grow up knowing about Ram, you might need a different sacred name or phrase. And so it's a repetition. So it could be something like, thank you, I love you. And I would say this, as part of my healing, I said this every time I took a walk with every step. Thank you, I love you. 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 While I was cooking, thank you, I love you. Thank you, I love you. Thank you, I love you. But there are other, you can pick anything that feels good. I use japa as a repetition. Like there's a word that for my body, it feels really good, is trustworthy. So I will go as I'm falling asleep at night. I've had a lot of experiences where I couldn't trust people, right? Or where something wasn't trustworthy. But my body kind of like soaks in, it feels nourished by that word. So I put in the energy of that word, like usually starting from my toes and go all the way up my body. And I'm just repeating it until that part of the body, I tune into the pulse, the pulse point in, let's say, my feet.
Okay.
And I feel my feet pulsing. And then I'm tuning into that word and I'm just thinking it. I'm not saying it out loud because I'm I'm on the path to go to sleep, but I'm just thinking trustworthy, trustworthy, trustworthy without saying it, just thinking of it. And I'm putting it into my toes or my toenails or the ball of my feet or the arch of my feet or the heel of my feet or the top of my feet or my ankles or wherever. And I'm moving through my whole body and I go through my whole body just using that. And then I'll go through life. You know, my future is trustworthy. My instincts are trustworthy. My spirit is trustworthy. My past is trustworthy. My finances are trustworthy. My breathing is trustworthy. The air is trustworthy. The ground is trustworthy. And then as I would do that, you know, I'm falling asleep as I'm doing this, so it goes away after you just like go into this thing. But then you're sleeping in a blissful way. And as I would do that, I would notice, oh, I'm taking a walk. The earth is meeting my every my every step.
Right.
I want to, that was trustworthy. There's just trustworthy. I'm inhaling and I'm inhaling air. That is trustworthy. I want to pick up my water bottle and take a drink of water. And I do that, my hands, my bottle of water, the water inside, my shoulders, my mouth, my throat, all of that, we're to be able to allow that to happen. So you start to see where you are more, in that case, trustworthy, but you could make it for anything. And I also use japa with parts of songs. Like one of the songs I sing with my clients a lot, and I do not sing, so, but it's, you know, I just sing this part, you know, I feel good, na 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 na, like I knew that I would now. Ow, so good, bump bump, so good. I got a you, bump 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 bump. Right. So forgive me if I didn't sing it right. And James Brown, I love you. Sorry. Anyway,
You got it right.
but that's a really good song. Like that little bit, that's a japa. If you just sang that part in your head, you know, feel good, na 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 na, like I knew that I would. So good, so good. I got a you, right? So you're repeating it, right, over and over again. And for an example of how this works, so there's a song I used to sing. Is it's a funny song. It's like I'm on top of the world. I don't even know how it goes now after James Brown. I'm on. One of my clients, when I sing that song, he goes, "You're so white." Sorry to all those people who actually know how to sing. But so the song, the lyrics of the song are, I'm on top of the world, looking down on creation, and the only explanation or
I can find
is
is
the
the
love.
world. That's Karen Carpenter, I think. Karen Carpenter or Helen Reddy.
One of them, I don't know. I
Yeah,
think it's,
yeah.
I'm not sure. And the love that I've found ever since you've been around, you keep me
Just
on the
put
top.
me on the top of the world. Yes,
Yeah, so I used to sing
that's a
that.
nice one.
Yeah, I sing that. And then I got invited on an invitation only expedition to the high Arctic. And now I live on a cliff overlooking mostly greenery and a few mansions, right? So I'm on top of a cliff. And I went to the high Arctic, which is considered the top of the world, but maybe the South Pole is also the top of the world. I don't know. Um, so it's interesting how it carries you. And then because I say that trustworthy word, I like that word a lot. My body has become more trustworthy, just in general. It's like healthier. My sleep is trustworthy. My bladder lasts for a long time, trustworthily.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting thing. That's how you do it.
Yeah, the connection towards the ability to manifest through the verbalization, through the thoughts. I read the Akashic records, and I know from the that reverberation of person's communication, a person's actions, and a person's thoughts, go to that astral plane, to that fifth dimension, and fill in the spaces of our lives in terms of how we have the self-talk that we consume ourselves with. But the biggest problem is the self-victimization of how we victimize ourselves to, I guess, to get attention in some capacity, or we don't know how to draw attention to ourselves, and so we victimize ourselves. We lower ourselves to a level of self-pity where we hope someone will rescue us and save us, and then we turn on ourselves in the process of having put ourselves in this low position. Um, how do you advise, or what would you tell somebody in terms of shifting from the victimization energy to one of self-empowerment?
A lot of times when we're little kids, something will happen that we don't realistically at that age have a lot of control over. Like, you try to get something from the counter and it's too far and you break something, right? And if you're too little to even reach it and you're trying to climb up, and there's things that happen and you don't have the power. Or if somebody's arguing, let's say mom and dad are arguing and you don't want them to argue, but you're not physically capable to get in between and say, stop it, you guys. You don't even have maybe the words, right?
Right.
So you might not even remember these kinds of experiences because they become normalized. And what happens is there's a belief system that happens, just like I had that belief as a little kid, I better not sleep through the night or I could die. There's a belief is, I don't have any power here. I can't do anything. I don't have a choice. And that kind of thinking is part of what makes victim thinking.
The helplessness,
It's the helplessness, and it's
shame.
the feeling of like, I don't have a choice. I can't do anything. I'm powerless. And that creates, everything else is more powerful than me. And so one thing to do is I help people clear that programming, because it becomes normalized and you don't even know that you were programmed with it. Because most of the time it's happening, we're in a hypnagogic trance, meaning we're getting hypnotized from in utero up until about 6 or 7 years old. So there are so many times where we've had some lack of power. If somebody was calling us a name at school, or I used to get beat up all the time at school. Like I get on the playground and these three boys would come and they just knock me to the ground and try to pull my skirt up and my panties down and this whole thing. And I was like, whatever, second or third grade. So that's another time, there's a victimhood in my head. I'm powerless. They're all stronger than me. There's more of them. They're bigger. When I saw this like 15 years ago, I realized that my fear of boys caused boys to be scary to me. I realized that my fear of losing someone caused me to lose someone. My fear of getting hurt caused me to get hurt. And I saw it so clearly, and I realized I'm doing this. I'm doing all the great things I've had in my life. I've had a lot of great things, and I've had a lot of not great things. And I'm doing both. I'm the one who's in power, and not in an egotistical way, but in a way of like clarity of, wow, I get to choose. I have that infinite power that knows what I want. You have that infinite power that knows what you want. And now use that repetitive aspect of the mind, the part of the mind that wants to create a loop, put japa into the loop instead of put some japa that you like into the loop. It could be, whatever. Don't do the Stone song about you can't get what you want. Don't do that one. But you got to check the lyrics that you like, or the word that you like, that it's a really good word, and that it really nourishes you when you say it, that you feel your body's like sucking it in, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That's aligning the conscious, subconscious, and body in combination in terms of alignment.
Is part of it. There's
Okay.
more, because sometimes people don't know how to, like, if you don't know how to unravel the stuff that you were programmed with in the first 6, 7 years, with that you don't even remember, that seems normal, and it seems normal, you won't have an ability to let it, you won't have ability to heal it until you can actually see it. Because it's just like, okay, so um I went to India, this is a long time ago. I was for Deepak's daughter's birthday, and it was in the 90s. And so I knew a lot of the people, because I did a lot of meditation at his place, and I just knew I had a lot of friends in that group. So it's the third day in India, and we're in a little rickshaw, me and like three other people, and we're going somewhere. And as we're driving, there's cars all over the place, and all of a sudden I look over at the median on in between the roads, the two sides of the road, and there's cows laying on the road. I was like, oh my God, there's cows on the road. And everybody starts laughing at me. I said, why are you guys laughing? They said, Karen, you've been seeing cows everywhere for 3 days. I said, I have? And they said, yeah, but I didn't believe, like, I knew that cows were sacred, but I didn't believe that they'd be walking into the stores, into the temples, on the meridian, walking through the traffic. I didn't think that.
Right, right, right.
See them for 3 days. And it was only until my friends laughed at me that all of a sudden I was like, oh, they're on the sidewalk. They're in the temples. They're in the stores. They're in the restaurants. They're just kind of like, it's everywhere. At least in this part of area of where I was, they were everywhere. And I literally could not see them until I could see them. And so when you have a guide or someone who's going to laugh at you in a fun way, make fun of you, like my friends did, when you have a guide or someone funny, it'll help you see things that you can't see. And part of the thing that I like to do, like I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and he was talking about his relationship with his mom. And I said, oh, it sounds like she made you feel a lot of shame. And he said, how do you know that? And I said, I can feel it in you. That's what, and he was like, I never put it together like that, but I think you're right. He says, that really hit me. Yeah. And it was normalized to him. The shame is part of who he is,
Right,
but
right.
it's not normal. It's not healthy. It's not who he really is.
After all of these experiences that you've had, the near-death experiences, the childhood experience, riding, I guess, the big wheel in the street and hitting the tree trunk, was there a peak in your spiritual strength, or your intuition, so to speak? Has it remained on the same level? Has it
No,
changed
it
in
keeps
it?
growing
It keeps growing. And what do you attribute that to?
because I'm staying out of the way more than anything.
Surrender.
I'm, um, well, one of the definitions of surrender is to join the winning side.
Oh.
So in that sense, yes.
And what's the winning side?
To me, it's the side of my spirit. It's the side of my spirit that knows everything I want, and that's always loving me and always loving you and always guiding each of us. Your spirit guides you.
Yeah.
And that energy, I mean, I don't know what you call it. It could be God, it could be Muhammad, it could be, Krishna. I don't know, whatever anybody wants to call it. I just say it's my spirit, but it's this energy that I feel that saves my life many, many times. It's the energy that gives me the desire to be healthy and to do something about it, instead of just taking the medicines that the doctor said
Right,
that
right.
sicker.
Absolutely. The spiritual path, it seems in some capacity to seem like a spiral. It goes around in circles, and we pass over different areas of what we might have passed over in the past, and we retrace those future experiences in some other capacity. I guess with the experience or the wisdom to better get through it, and to better maybe help others on their own path. And through your experiences that you've had, how do you think that you assist other people in the work that you're doing or will do? Or
Well, I feel really blessed because I have such a clear connection with my own spirit. I sometimes ignore it, but most of the time I'm really good at listening to it and trusting it. I'm really good at listening to it and trusting it. It's exhilarating. And so my spirit loves you and your spirit, right? And so then your spirit knows what you need. I don't know what you need, but your spirit and my spirit guide me. So I'm guided by everybody I'm working with spirit, and I'll say stuff that I don't know why I'm saying it. And yet it's opening up things for the other person. My intuition, I've always had intuition, but it has gotten more and more and more. Now I have, I now know nobody dies. It's the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transmuted. People transform into pure energy, but they don't, their body might die, but they don't die. Who they are doesn't die. And I've had so many people who have come to me and helped me, like my dad. He died 20 something years ago. One day, I'd been writing out appreciation for a few hours, and when I started to go to bed, I felt my dad, and it was so clear that he loved me, that he was proud of me, that he was proud of my brother, proud of my nieces and nephews, proud of my mom. And then he started to guide me on how to be a better caretaker to my mom, how to be a better daughter to my mom. And he changed my life. I made a book, his idea. My mom's Greek, and the word eulogy means a study of good. EU is really, it means usually good, like euphemism or euphoria. So it's a well-being, EU. And eulogy are words or the study of good. And most people get eulogies after they die, but he goes, why don't you make a eulogy in the form of a book? Because my mom likes to read. And so he had me, I mean, he's dead, but he had me connect with all my mom's relatives, all her friends, all her coworkers, all these people that loved her, her neighbors, different people, my friends that knew her, my brother's friends that knew her, all these people, and her grandkids, all that stuff. And then everybody wrote a letter to her, gave it to me, and sent a picture of themselves, and I made it into a little hardback book with her picture on both sides, and it's all about what everybody loves about her. It's all the stories of what, how great she was, how she changed their lives, and so she reads it, and you can just see she's like
Yeah.
touched, and my dad gave me that understanding of eulogy and the idea of the book.
Was that
I mean,
was that through a dream or through a vision or?
I was cooking. It was, I get a lot of messages when I cook. I write a lot of poetry when I cook. No, I was just cooking, and I just felt my dad, and I could feel it was him. There's this different, like everybody wants their non-physical, or even the spirits of everyone is we're all one, but there's a different energy signature that I feel. And my dad's energy signature is a very grounded yet lighthearted, loving, powerful energy. It's different than other dead people that I know. And yeah, so no, I just felt it was him, and I can almost always know. And I've had so many experiences like where somebody, like one of my clients, her husband died very suddenly, about 5 years ago. And I felt him come to me, and it was early in the morning, and I felt him, and he was singing. I don't even know how this song goes, but the line was, "Come on, baby, let the good times roll." I don't think I've ever heard that song, but I know the line.
The Cars, yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah,
Oh,
let the good times roll, I think, with the Cars. The Cars.
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. So I'm going to listen to it. But anyway, so he would sing and he said that to me, and I didn't know why, but I knew it was him. I'd never met him. And I texted her and say, I think I got a message from your husband. This is what he said. Now, she calls me up and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. I said, why? She said, we said that to each other. Every time we passed each other in the house, we just, like rub our hands against each other and say, come on, baby, let the good times roll. And she said it was something that only us and our son knew. We never did it out in public. We just did it with each other. And I had never seen it, when I was working with her. And so she said, you gave me the understanding that he's here, right? Like she said, wow, now I feel more confident that I can feel him. And I've had that over and over and over. Another time I was just out getting a bite to eat. It was in like 5 o'clock at night, and I was at a restaurant, and this man walked up and he said, "Can I sit with you?" And I said, "Sure." And we start talking, and he said he'd been going through grief. His wife had died a year before, and he just was just devastated, and he didn't know what to do. And I said, "Oh wow." I said, "Do you ever feel her around you?" And he said, "No." I said, "Okay." And then there was like this silence, and I just said, "Merrily, merrily, 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 life is but a dream." And he looks at me, his eyes are wide, and he goes, "My wife's name was Merrily, spelled the same way as that song." And I have her picture with that particular line going around the frame of the picture right by my bed. I said, "Oh, cool." He's like, "Now do you feel her?" And he's like,
Yeah.
so like those things happen now so consistently. Lights turn on. My one of my best friends who died, she turns on the lights on specific days to get me to do certain things that involve her family. It's so funny. She even texted me once after she was dead. It didn't have anything on the text, but it came from her number, and it was just like a blank. I don't even know if you can make a blank text, but it was a blank, blue thing.
Right, right. Well, the interesting thing is that you've, I guess, raised your frequency to a station that spirit can connect with you and pass on information. A lot of people don't realize the connection between our energetic vibration and our energetic body. And you're a perfect example of having these synchronicities and these messages passed through you. And I guess, what would you say is the biggest, I would say big, what would you say is what quality that you possess allows this to happen?
I have cultivated not being in my head and being in my heart and my belly and my sex organs, and just feeling my being more sensual and kinesthetic. I'm very bright. I've had training. I was pre-med, I've had a lot of science background. I like physics. I like neuroscience. I like a lot of things, epigenetics. I'm a nerdy girl, but I love, the kinesthetic is where I get the most information.
Yeah.
So it's through the heart. Well, I'm learning French, and one of the books I'm listening to is about, it's about how the heart is the pilot of the body. And heart math also talks about how there's more nerves going from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. So I say it's like a freeway going from the heart to the brain, and just like a little dirt road going from the brain to the heart, right? And it's like the brain is great, but I don't believe the brain is meant to be for thinking. This is so weird to say it,
Yeah,
but
no, I understand.
I believe the brain is meant for receiving. And when you're in that receiving state, wisdom comes in, and you don't even have to understand it for it to change your life.
It's interesting. I looked at your experiences, and I guess speaking to other people as well, but yours specifically, as we're speaking here now, as almost the situations or the near-death experiences that you went through were almost tune-ups for your energetic body. I guess to help you tune into what your true challenge, not challenge, but your true purpose was to be when you were reincarnated into this life with this body. And it seems that each experience is fine tuning, and your capacity to actually be consistently enhancing your frequency is very inspiring, because so many people choose to believe and then to disbelieve the gifts that they possess, and they're always finding ways of thinking that they need to be grounded by cutting that part of life off. And the fact that you're an example of somebody who's had so many interests and so many inspiring positions of what you've done, it's very interesting and inspiring to me.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as we move from that subject, just let's transition to the three books that you've written,
Mm.
which maybe you can share. Well, I mean, I know the names of them. I can read them to the audience, which is Chronic Pleasure,
They're
Effortless Enchantment, and Chronic Pleasure in Relationships.
very good, very good. Yeah.
So
This is
maybe,
the first book. I used to have chronic pain. I used to have narcolepsy. I used to be depleted. again, the the panic attacks, dissociation, PTSD, anxiety, um, all those things. I had all those things. And chronic pleasure is kind of most of the path I took. Now, I wrote that book in 2018. So it's the path I took up till 2018, but I keep growing. So now it's 5 years later. So, but at the time, it was the path I used that basically healed my body. And from that book, I mean, people read it, and when they're like, "Wow, I'm 5 pages in, and you've already changed my life," and I'm like, "Oh, that's so sweet." So that's one book. The second book is Effortless Enchantment, and I wrote that just because I've had an amazing, I've had a lot of really amazing experiences growing up through my life. I've done over 1,000 hours of TV and film. I've talked about that. I talked about the near-death experiences. I've talked about just different parts of my life that people wanted to know about. So I wrote that book, and then the third, and that book kind of also details how I became awakened. And then the third book is Chronic Pleasure in Relationships, because I used to always get the worst from men. You know, I had been molested as a kid, and I'd been beaten, and I'd been beat up, and you know, all this stuff. So I had about men, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shifted that about men, and men shifted towards me so profoundly that I just feel like an entirely different being. And I was out to dinner with a girl. I was just meeting her for the first time. She's a friend of another friend of mine, and she was a Miss Universe. She's, 30 years younger than me, smoking hot, long blonde hair, huge dress, tiny waist, great ass, everything. Like, she's just like, oh my God. And she's saying to me, I cannot find a good guy. And that's the night we were out to dinner, and I thought, oh, that's the book I'm going to write. Because I was between that book and the book I'm writing now. And I thought, wow, it's amazing because she has it all. She has it all. And yet I have really good guys in my life, really amazing men in my life that are kind and generous and thoughtful and sweet and loving and helpful and supportive and really amazing. And so it's really, it really was a shift. Men literally changed for me the same day that I changed my thoughts about men. Men literally changed to me in how they behaved to me. And before that, men were either rude to me, too sexual with me, ignoring me. And then after I did this work, men always smiled at me. Men was, inviting me, gifting me, picking me up, being more, and I just started to relax and go, oh my God, I have always wanted this and I never knew how to get it. So that's what that book is about.
Yeah, okay. So a mirror of our inner world displaced on the outer world, right? The mirroring. Um,
Yeah.
if someone were interested in contacting you in terms of the work you do, your website, maybe you could just mention the website and
Yeah, the easiest way for people to get contact with me is if they download one of my books, and you can download them for free. They're on Amazon, and the first book is on Audible, but and I'm going to put the other two on Audible. I narrated the first one as well, but I have a place where you can download them for free, and that is chronic pleasure book.com, chronicpleasurebook.com, and all three books are on there.
okay.
And you could read any one or you could read all three, but at the back of every book is my email. So everybody can just download, even if you just download one book, even if you don't want to read the book, you can grab the email, and that's how you can contact me. And then my website is KarenLorrieCoaching.com. And then I have two podcasts. One is called Stories We Love, and I interview people who are doing good in the world, what I think is good in the world: regenerative organic farming, helping children, psychic phenomena, helping your health, all this stuff. And then I also have another podcast called Chronic Pleasure Podcast, and that's mostly just me talking about some of the things that have helped me, so that people who can't, let's say they can't afford to work with me, or who just don't have the schedule to work with me or whatever, they can go on there and look at a lot of videos and just take the parts that they like and leave the rest. So
Yeah, you're very inspiring, and the energy is terrific. What would you leave the audience with if you could leave a message, to inspire them with something specific?
you have power within you. You have choice always. And anything that feels limiting to you, can never be the truth. That's the second practice in my first book. It's the practice of relevance. Relevare is the root of the word relevance. Relevare means to lift up and lighten you. And when something is relevant, it's relevant because it's the truth. If something lifts you up and lightens you, that's how you know it's the truth. If it sinks you down, that's how you know it's a lie. It's old programming, and it's not who you are.
Excellent. Yeah. It's interesting. I just had a vision of you being a queen,
Ah, that's so nice.
sitting on a throne almost, actually, from either it must have been a past life or something.
Oh, that's so nice. I have I think I have 14 tiaras.
Oh, there you go. Well,
Wear 'em when I work out if they'll stay on, depending on what kind of workout I'm doing.
well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining me and sharing your story, sharing your wisdom and insight and history. And hopefully people will get in contact with you and read your books, and just bring your name further into this field of personal growth and spiritual growth. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's lovely to meet you, and I love your experiences and your wisdom. Thank you so much.